Sanctum. Art and Story by John Ross. Turn on the torch, a man's voice somewhere distant cried out. Blue sand and blue sea faded softly away into a grey evening sky. Cool, damp air drifted in from the water's edge, past a solitary bulk of driftwood. A lone star appeared, as if the fading light was gathering to a point in advance of the coming dark. Turn it on. I can't see a fucking thing. The voice came again, suddenly close. Beach, sea, and sky blended more quickly into the middle distance. The point of gathering light swelled, and the whole world creaked and lurched. Ida Richter opened her eyes, stubbornly giving the vision of that quiet beach back to the recesses of her subconscious. Still weary from the sleep aid, she sat up and lifted the cover of her observation portal. Two auxiliary system techs rushed past the open door of her cabin, cursing the failing corridor lights. Outside the portal, the pale red light of Lalonde's main sequence star was blooming and arcing prismatically in breathtaking display. Ida Richter swung her legs off the bunk, grabbed hold of the frame and braced. A horn sounded, long and low. 3, 2, 1, she muttered, still groggy. The Hell-Yard long-reach cargo vessel lurched again as it shed its warp casing with a tremendous moan followed by the muffled roar of the main engine's deceleration burn. The vessel shook and creaked under the burn for exactly 60 seconds, and then went silent. Ida loosened her grip. After 30 long months, 4 parsecs, and the probability of some long-term psychological side effects, they had arrived in Lalonde. Ida Richter had thought it better to ignore the consequences of prolonged waking exposure to casing travel than to weigh the side effects and risk losing heart for her hallowed endeavor. Ida groaned to her feet, dressed, and headed for the mess. The corridor lights were still malfunctioning. Duncan Drummond pulled the pliant fiber waist belt a little tighter on his slouching flight suit that he let hang at the waist in the way most hangar adepts did. He stepped into the lifter. The intense heat generated in engineering, cargo, and the hangars on the Hell-Yard ships as the casing drive unspooled justified the breach of corporate dress standard. He tucked the end of the waist belt in on itself. Losing weight after 30 months working long-reach cargo was not irregular, but was made worse by the urgency memorandum that limited their planetary leave anywhere civilized enough to offer much of a real meal. The memorandum, so far as he knew, came directly from the uppermost pillars of the Sanctum of Azathoth. A new communion hopeful was on board, the woman named Richter. This vessel was executing a time-sensitive delivery of the Richter woman from the Sanctum homeworld into the hands of a helmsman in some dark corner of the industrial megasphere on Harley. During his time working the lifter stations back home, Duncan had known a Sanctum apostate named Martin. The man had possessed a skill for telling stories and a pointed distaste for the Sanctum of Azathoth. It was from Martin that Duncan had learned much about the Sanctum's teachings and its tenacity for sending beguiled followers to meet fate in the pursuit of some god they had found lurking within the nectar of a plant growing on a remote moon of Alioth. Duncan leaned back into the canvas of the lifter pilot seat. He flicked on the main system power. He had, for all these years, given almost no thought to the Sanctum's contentious pursuits. But now, for a moment, he did. "It's not my business, but please don't go through with this, Ida," Duncan Drummond said flatly, his eyes lowered, focused on fastening Ida Richter's safety restraints. His voice was drowning beneath the drone of the propellant loader. "You are right. It's not your business. But I do appreciate your concern, Adept. I really do," Ida Richter said confidently from the passenger seat. She followed Duncan with her eyes as he sealed the lifter's airlock and slouched himself into the canvas seat in front of her. "I've met a helmsman once before. He was a very dangerous man," Duncan persisted, looking over his shoulder so she could hear him. "We can go down there, have a drink, avoid those fucking psychos, and just come back up. Nothing to lose from this besides the fuel. It's no shame. It's no ticket against you." "It's my duty, Duncan, to the Sanctum," Ida began. The sound of the hangar doors beginning to open flooded the lifter with the whine and drag of metal pulling on metal. Their voices were lost in the din. Out beyond the lifter's canopy, the atmosphere above Harley shimmered a deep and pale blue, like snow in the evening light. Beyond the horizon loomed the roiling cyclone storms of the gas giant that was host to this icy moon. 1 megameter. Duncan Drummond's voice came amplified through the lifter's line array. Buckle up. The lifter attacked into the atmosphere in great geysers of flame and superheated silica. Its stabilizers did the best they could to reduce the turbulence, but the ride was violent. Moments later, the chaotic sound of the lifter descending at 5 gravities gave way to an eerie silence as they breached the atmosphere and into a free glide. Hundreds of kilometers below the pillow tops of distant cloud cover caught the lemon-yellow light of the rising sun. Duncan Drummond banked the machine's starboard several degrees and accelerated toward the Albor Range and the perspiration-soaked streak of the HMO's northern megasphere nestled deep within the labyrinth of towering peaks. They touched down in a mercantile port in the northern tenement district. Wait for me here, Duncan. Whatever they want for the pad, pay it. I won't be gone more than 24 hours, Ida had said before disappearing into the thronging crowd. They won't reject me, I promise. Moisture perspired from the megasphere's massive dome in a thick mist. It collected and ran through the ramshackle streets and streaked the sheet metal exteriors of kilometer-tall tenement houses. Pink glow from a sign far overhead that read Harley Mining Operations danced and shimmered in the small pools at Ida's feet. She stopped at the open doors to a cargo elevator, shivered a little from the moisture, and stepped inside. The lift rumbled up its exposed shaft, the city sprawling into the misty distance until it reached what must have been the top of the habitation levels. Ida stepped off the lift into a large room sparsely furnished. On the ground was what looked to be an honest-to-God rug from the mid-east of the old world. In the middle of the room was a hammock-like structure flanked on its left by a desk littered with several multi-function displays and a collection of stim applicators. From behind the desk came a voice. "Hello, Ida." He was a short man that, at a glance, was sporting several highly valuable and highly illegal implants, including an optical slave mesh. Helmsman used optical meshes to more accurately guide a client's experience under the influence of precisely administered and maintained doses of the nectar of the biphagen plant, the most profoundly powerful hallucinogenic compound ever discovered. Ida Richter stepped forward to greet the man, and in the same moment she was plucked from her stride and lifted within inches of the ceiling. "Don't damage her, you card-carrying imbecile," the helmsman spoke sternly. "We are to present her unharmed. Tell your imbecile to get his hands off me. I am the communion hopeful from the Sanctum of Azathoth." Ida twisted in protest. "Oh yes," the helmsman said flatly. "This journey is more invasive for you than they've let on, I'm afraid. You see, some doors can be opened only once." The hulking figure tightened its grip and carried Ida to the hammock that opened before her, exposing a milky pink interior like the mouth of some biomechanical abomination. The imbecile's giant hands placed her inside the grotesque furniture and held her firmly there. Needle tips emerged from all edges of the fleshy berth and burrowed beneath her skin. "Do not be afraid," the helmsman's voice drummed into Ida's throbbing ears. "Azathoth will make a feast of your fear." Ida's veins flooded with a wave of cold. White searing brightness filled her mind, and as fast as it overcame her, it shrunk to a pinhole of light, hanging in a gray evening sky above blue sand, and the smell of sea air filled her nostrils. Before her, beneath, and above, a shape began to converge, from exactly where she could not discern. Perhaps it came from beneath the surface of the sea, or perhaps the evening sky. Its immense and inexplicable presence fell heavily upon her. At once it was a great colossus, amorphous and impossible. It was the gentle hands of her father, uplifted in prayer, and it was a massive antlered beast ablaze with the fire of industry, its back gruesomely adorned with the fighting tools of ancient war. It spoke in a voice that struck Ida Richter as full of sadness. "We have always known you, indomitable you with golden threads tied tightly to infinity and deep recesses of stone. Give us gods, oh, give them us. We have tried for many ages, in many shapes, in many forms, in many minds. You listen not, but hear well. Give us gods, they said. Give them something else. I am something else, as gods are and have always been the manifestation of cosmic fear. Beneath the layers of clay a corpse, thought lost to time, stirs. This ragged humanity exhumed we find molded from slag, born of contest, brutalized by the fiction of a conscious intelligence in heat and genesis, primordial and immature. Contest is to become kingdom, collaboration to become eternal. The shape began to writhe and smolder. Its voice deepened.
Return from whence you have come, unbelonging. We will not suffer contest.
Ida did not speak. She could not speak. For as long as that vision of the colossal beast had been there, it had now been gone. She had been alone on that quiet beach for as much time as she could recall. The stars above were nebulous and stunning. "Open it," the helmsman said. The imbecile pried the hammock apart, revealing its pupil deed. The effect of the biphogen nectar was total. The sweating mass within held scant human resemblances, between which the flesh had blistered and probed outward like the shoots of a blood-soaked vine. The face, now ruptured asunder by the blooming extrusions, gazed up at them with its one remaining eye. She was the communion hopeful, the imbecile jeered. Duncan Drummond pulled deeply from his cigarette. He leaned back against the lifter's engine housing and checked the time. The lights from the city shimmered their pale neon from deep beyond the falling mist.